Back here on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, Jackson Heil, Chris Hennessy, and a pleasure now to be joined by one of the radio voices of the U.S. Open and a 2010 graduate of Fordham and FUV alum. Brian Clark joins us now. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time. How are you?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
And a pleasure to have you as well. And let's get right into it. Obviously, Brian, third round of the U.S. Open continuing today. And quite a crazy experience it's been over this first week of play so far. Obviously, no fans there. What's the experience been like for you in this such a unique scenario?
Unique's one word. Surreal's a word. It's crazy just being there without fans. It's eerie, but at the same time, it's also, it's great that there is a U.S. Open, that we are having this tournament. But at the same time, it's just weird. It's sad that there aren't fans there because so much of what makes the U.S. Open is the energy, the New York energy, just that buzz that comes up for 2 weeks every summer. So it's definitely without because of that. But at the same time, there is that sense of everybody being so glad that major tennis is back. It's a way for these players to make money, earn some points, way for a lot of people just around the game to get back and get some work going. So it's a balance. It's just something that we've certainly never seen before, and hopefully we won't see again at the U.S. Open.
I want to talk about Andy Murray for a second. Obviously, a name that not even tennis diehards, just sports fans in general know. Olympic gold medal, #1 overall at one point. And I guess what a lot of people don't know is he's coming off of 2 hip surgeries and 2 years sidelined for major championships. What have you seen from him specifically during the tournament? He won his first round match. That's just so resilient at an older age in tennis.
I know, it's funny we talk older ages in tennis. He's 33. Like, we talk about him like he's a senior citizen. But especially as we talk about it was a hip resurfacing, and he really thought his career might be over, and he underwent this procedure not really thinking about coming back to play tennis. I mean, it was always in the back of his mind. It was just about quality of life and trying to live pain-free because he was in so much pain. And after he had it done, he talked to Bob Bryan, one half of the doubles team that just retired. And Bob Bryan had just had the same procedure not long before Murray. And he told him, I think you can come back. So it's been a long road back, but he is here. And resilient is the perfect way to describe that first round win over Yoshihito Nishioka. He was down 2-0. He came back to win in 5. I forget it was the first or second, first day of the tournament. And maybe second. And you're thinking, I wish there were fans here for this. This place would be going crazy. But it was just incredible to see Murray once again. It was his 10th time in his career he came back from 2-0 down. He's one of the all-time great fighters in this sport. But then in the third round, second round, he had to play Felix Auger-Aliassime, and that was just too tall of an order. I mean, Felix is one of the rising stars of the game, and he really ripped Andy apart. Murray, one of the all-time great returners, did not have a break chance on the Auger-Aliassime serve. So it was, really encouraging to see him back, but it was also a bit of a reminder of what he's up against as these younger and talented players come up.
Brian, while we're on the topic of the big guns, we can't go without mentioning the absence of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal this week. I mean, there has to be a certain energy around the U.S. Open, especially obviously when there's fans there, but even when there's not, when those two are in action on the court. Obviously, Rafa taking it last year in 5 sets against Medvedev in the final. How much are those guys missed this week so far?
They're missed immensely. It's the first time since 1999 that this tournament's gone on without either of them here.
It's incredible.
But at the same time, for the reasons we just talked about, it almost gets overshadowed because it's not like it's a normal tour year and we've made all the stops and now we check the box of the U.S. Open and boom, Nadal and Federer aren't here. It's so strange that there are so many other things going on that, their absence is certainly felt, but at the same time, it's not the overwhelming story like it might be otherwise.
I want to switch over to the women's side for a second. This afternoon, actually just in a couple hours, there's a match that I guess you could call the changing of the guard match, but it feels like Serena Williams never ages, so maybe not. But Serena Williams against Sloane Stephens. I mean, if there are fans there, that would be a packed room. But what are you looking for in that one? Just the matchup of 2 American heavyweights, obviously Serena Williams, the greatest.
2 Americans, Chris, who've won this tournament before. Serena, of course, a whole handful of times, and Sloane Stephens, her first and to date only major title. I quibble, though, with changing of the guard because in some ways, Sloane is kind of in this middle generation where she is older. She's in her middle 20s compared to these Sophia Kenin types who are younger. So she's a little bit more established on tour, but she has traditionally been inconsistent. And her most success has come at the majors, of course, winning this tournament, a final a couple of years ago in Paris. So she elevates her game on the big stage. And I'm really fascinated to see this match because Serena, coming into this tournament, you could see the focus. She tries to win 24. When the tour restarted at a small event in Lexington, Kentucky, she was there but didn't win it. They played the Cincinnati, the Western and Southern Open here at the U.S. Open last week. She was beaten there by a very talented player in Maria Sakkari. But all 5 matches before the U.S. Open that Serena's played, she's been pushed to 3 sets, win or lose. She has not really had smooth sailing. She has tightened it up a bit in her first 2 wins of the U.S. Open against Christy Ahn in the first round, and then the other night in her second round victory. So Serena was better, but this is by far her tallest order of this U.S. Open against Sloane Stephens.
Brian, one of the surprises on the women's side this year for sure has to be Victoria Azarenka with the way that she's played. I mean, she was great in ATP Cincinnati beforehand, and now she's come out and really been dominant early in this tournament. What have you made of her kind of revival after it's been a while for her since she's really been back to playing at this high of a level on the top stage? She was number 1 back in 2012, and she kind of fell off a little bit. Injuries were part of that, but it seems like she's back now at the age of 31. What have you made of her tournament so far?
It's great to see her back, and it is really impressive. I mean, hard courts have been her best surface. She's won Australia. She's been to the final here. It's great to see her back at the top of the game because it's funny we go Serena talking to Azarenka. One of the big stories of this U.S. Open, the number of mothers in this tournament on the women's side. Serena and Azarenka are both in that group. And yeah, Victoria spent some time kind of off the tour dealing with some of the things that go with raising a son. But she is fearless, and especially against Serena. I mean, one of the best finals here in recent memory was Azarenka Williams a couple of years ago. And there's so much drama there because she's not a player who's afraid coming on court. And some of these players, you can tell how they're intimidated by the resume when they step on court against a Serena Williams. Azarenka is not in that group, and with good reason. I mean, she is, as you said, Jackson, a former world number 1. That Cincinnati title was huge. Okay, she didn't have to play the final because Naomi Osaka withdrew, but just to get that big title under her belt again and have the results to back it up, huge for Azarenka.
We spoke about how Federer and Nadal are not here. That leaves, obviously, Novak Djokovic out of the big 3 in men's tennis. He's been nothing short of dominant. Do you expect anything different from Novak? Anybody can stop him at this point?
It doesn't seem like it. I mean, even if Federer and Nadal were here, Djokovic is unbeaten in 2020. And okay, there's been a long interruption, but the way he was playing, I'm not sure he would have lost during that long shutdown. I mean, that might be overstating it. I mean, he is the best player in the world right now. And everything he does is just locked in. His defense, his return of serve, his movement, his agility, how he can go defense to offense. It's what's made him a great player, and it's what makes him, I would say, the overwhelming favorite going into the second week of this tournament.
Brian, if there's going to be a guy that's going to catch him, it's probably Daniil Medvedev, if anything. Dominic Thiem obviously has been there before, but Medvedev on the hard surface just seems to always get it done, especially early in his career. Obviously, an early loss to Roberto Bautista Agut in Cincinnati, but he's one of the best returners we have in the game of tennis right now. Is this the year that Medvedev will get on the board when it comes to a major championship?
I don't think so, just because I don't see anybody beating Djokovic. But everything you say about Medvedev is true. And we remember that final last year. He came back from 2 sets down against Nadal to force him to a 5th, where Rafa ultimately won. When you look at this young generation of guys, Medvedev is different in that he's got more of like just an unorthodox kind of game, whereas teams, Zverev, Tsitsipas, it's power, power, power. Medvedev, it's, plenty of power, but he can do a few more things that put him in just slightly different positions and give his opponent a different look and prohibit them from getting comfortable. So that's one reason why he was so successful last year. I mean, he almost didn't lose in the summer hard courts in North America last year. He won more matches on tour than anybody a year ago. So Medvedev has a great chance here. I like his odds of getting to the final if he can get past a team in a semifinal. But I just think beating Djokovic in this current state that Djokovic is in is a tall order. And one other thing I want to double back to, one of the matches we had sort of circled when the draw comes out was a potential Djokovic-Tsitsipas semifinal. That's not happening after maybe the match of the tournament. You guys probably didn't see it because it didn't end until after 1 o'clock. Borna Coric saved 6 match points, and he beat Tsitsipas in a 5th set on Armstrong after 1 a.m., 4 hours, I think 20-something minutes. Huge win for Coric, but that is Coric is a very good player, but it's one different step for Djokovic in a road to a final.
Lots of big matches today out in Flushing. What's one you're really looking forward to that we shall keep an eye out for today?
So I'm going to double back on what we just talked about, Serena and Sloane. I mean, and this is another match where it's a shame there's no crowd because Labor Day weekend at the U.S. Open, 2 Americans who've been on the big stage, have won this tournament before. It would be absolutely electric. I still think it's going to be electric in terms of the tennis. Atmosphere, of course, will be a little bit different. So pencil me in for Serena and Sloane. Daniil Medvedev gets it going on Ash by the time this airs. That match might be over. But interesting, actually, let's talk about Medvedev for a moment because he's playing J.J. Wolf. And Wolf is an American from Ohio, played tennis at Ohio State before turning pro. This is his first time into the main draw of a major, and here he is in the 3rd round. He's part of a big movement of young Americans. We'll see Frances Tiafoe in action today after a big 5-set win the other day. So Wolf is one of these young American guys to keep an eye on, but I think the eyeballs are going to be on Serena Sloane.
Brian, before we let you go, just one last question, and it's about Naomi Osaka, who's had quite an interesting tournament. Obviously, emotions running high for her with everything that's gone on in the world over the last few weeks. But first 2 rounds, she's been taken to 3 sets. And kind of overall, since she won Australia last year, it's been a bit of a rocky road for her. What's been your impression of her at this tournament so far? And what do you make of her game right now at 22 years old?
I mean, her game is still one of the best in the world, and we saw it yesterday. I did the match where she was pushed to a 3rd set by Marta Kostyuk and was able to just, in those big moments, she locked down, and just the power she has. I mean, it's not something that most players are really comfortable with dealing with, and Kostyuk yesterday was no exception. And interesting point, Jackson, because, yeah, it's been a bit of a bumpy path since that Australia title now a year and a half ago. But the one thing that I noticed from her, and we're not dealing with them in press conferences, obviously, because of all the restrictions that are in place. You're seeing them just over Zoom screens like you and I are talking. She looks a lot more comfortable, just kind of like a little more chill than in years past. She's an introvert by nature. So that's a fascinating storyline in this tournament with the lack of fans and the lack of the usual U.S. Open buzz. Does it maybe make these players more comfortable who aren't always so comfortable playing on the big stage? It's an energy-sapping thing when you're dealing with tens of thousands of people. She looks focused. She looks locked in, but she does look just kind of comfortable in her own skin. And even listening to her after her win yesterday, just kind of working through how she was able to make some adjustments on the fly. She'd like to be able to make more. It was really impressive, and I think sends an encouraging message about her as she works through this tournament.
Great insight as always, Brian. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Once again, Brian Clark, radio voice for the U.S. Open, joining the show today. Brian, best of luck with the rest of the tournament going forward. Have a great one, man.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.